option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together, this is big things. Doing big things, chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real, this life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream, all the dudes yell. This is just what I do and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, but homie, keep going. You know the saying, you can reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls, I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Robbie 2016. Like a phone to die, putting me in charge. I'm a general, from the front, I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Shrimp Tank down here in Boca Raton, Florida. That is ran in collaboration with the FAU Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. If you're tuning in on video, we are now at Shrimp Tank Boca, going live on our Instagram account, my LinkedIn account, and of course our Facebook account, and also the Adams Center Facebook account these days. And we are now sponsored by Celsius Beverage. That is happening. So you'll see that we have these beautiful Celsius beverages on the table today. And also, this is the first kickoff where the entrepreneurship class at FAU is sitting in. So check out our Instagram story, and you're going to see we have 10, 15 students sitting in, and they're going to ask questions on our new segment called what, Kevin? What is our new segment?
Hot
At FAU by
That's
the FAU
right.
Students. Absolutely.
Yeah, this is an exciting kind of transition for the podcast as we get ready for our new space, which is going to be fantastic. This is a great opportunity, and as always, there's a lot of stuff going on right here at FAU. There's still
join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet.
Chance to register for the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp that starts in just a couple weeks. Remember, that's free for all students, and it's discounted for alumni, and it's relatively inexpensive for those who aren't alumni or anything. So if you want to learn about entrepreneurship, come join me. I teach the boot camp. It's a lot of fun, and veteran entrepreneurs right now can still register for our Veterans Florida Entrepreneurship Program, which also starts in 2 weeks. So you are running out of time, folks. That is completely subsidized by Veterans Florida, meaning it is provided at no cost to those veteran business owners. You ready to jump right into the show today?
Let's do it. This is the podcast where street smarts and book smarts collide. We get to interview the best and brightest entrepreneurs from here in South Florida. So today we got Chris Rivera on the Shrimp Tank, and it's really interesting. I bumped into him at a networking event, South Florida Tech Hub. Got to always give credit to them. Nikki runs a great organization, and this is how relationships are made. Going to networking events, shaking hands, and then things like this occur. Now, Chris is on the Shrimp Tank. I think it was a year and a half later, and things take time to blossom. I think today we're so concerned about what happens right in that moment, right? Posting something, going viral. But no, me and Chris developed a relationship in the last year or so. He reached out, and I was like, yeah, I remember Chris. I remember specifically he went to University of Albany, and, he was in New York.
He's not one of these
sorry.
New Yorkers. Oh, Chris.
There's a lot of us down here.
A lot of us.
Everybody in Florida is from New York. Oh, well, this is exciting to have you, Chris. You're going to be the very first guest to try out our new first segment called Entrepreneur Origins, right? So you can start when you were 5 years old. You can start a couple of years ago, wherever you think. But becoming a successful entrepreneur is hard, right? It's not quite like becoming a comic book superhero, but everybody has an origin story, and we want to hear yours. So why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm definitely very excited to be a part of the show. How far back do you want me to go?
Up to you.
When you were born, come on, give it to us. What were you doing?
So growing up, I would say entrepreneurship for me started in high school. Early on in high school, I started selling bubblegum for maybe 10 to 20 cents a stick.
It's the New York thing to do. That's what I did. I got in trouble by the principal for selling bubblegum on the school bus. So
yeah,
I used to sell some stuff in high school too. I would have gotten in more trouble though if I got caught.
Care to elaborate?
No.
So
sounds like you would not have been a professor here, Kevin.
Just kidding, folks.
So I started off with that in high school. Then when I went to college, this I definitely don't endorse, but I started doing people's homework for money. And that I did get in trouble for when I was in
Oh,
college.
Jeez,
I love this
You're
first
at a
episode with the students. This
university.
is great.
Yeah.
This is the truth behind what it really is like to be an entrepreneur. Their early days,
Yeah.
finding the quickest way from point A to point B, and hustling.
Yeah. There was definitely plenty of demand, in the business school when I was doing that. And one of my teachers caught me. And I got into a little bit of trouble. But after that, I got a job at Ernst Young. So I went to school in New Albany. I was in the business school, and surprise, surprise, I was studying accounting and got a job at an accounting firm.
Yeah, but one of the big four, right?
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, yeah. EY, definitely a great firm, great job. I was there for 7 years, and to me, even though I had entrepreneurial tendencies, I thought I kind of made it. Like, this is my path, and I don't have to do people's homework for money anymore. And now I've got a good salary at a reputable accounting firm. So that entrepreneurial side of me definitely didn't die. I learned earlier on that even though I was doing well at my job and I really liked what I did, something kind of felt unfulfilled for me personally. And I tried a couple of things when I was at EY. I tried coding a couple of mobile apps and kind of fell flat on my face a couple times and lost all my money trying those projects. And then, one day I decided, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur full time, I just got to quit my job and go after it. And I decided to go into a space that I already knew, which was accounting and taxes. And that's how I got off to starting the Ecommerce Accountants.
Yeah. All right. So let's tell us about your company today. So you leveraged a skill, a knowledge base, something of value in order to create your own kind of service-oriented product, right? Very easy for someone like you to do, in a sense. And it's great. Now we know he's a real entrepreneur too, because all the real ones at some point lost all their money. So that definitely checks
A couple
out.
times for me.
Yeah. 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 So tell us about your venture now.
Yeah. So when I left EY, I knew I wanted to own an accounting firm. So I definitely struggled in the beginning. I remember thinking, well, I'm good at doing tax returns and accounting, so I'm just going to be an accountant and all of the business is going to flood right towards me. And surprise, surprise, after a couple days of opening up my firm, nothing happened. I had no clients, no income. So it was definitely early on a big learning experience that being a successful entrepreneur is more than just operations of the business or the fulfillment side of the business. It's a lot more complicated. So took some time to learn sales and marketing
Let's dive deeper into sales and marketing, because what you brought up is one of the most important things. So often people build apps, build websites, and they start businesses, even your local gym, your local restaurant. The difference between one restaurant and the other is one knows how to market. It's not the food quality, right? So sometimes it's the food quality, but often it's not. It's the marketing. So, you said something very important there, that your first year, like, it was so hard. You thought, oh, I'm an expert. They're just going to show up. But no, they love Ernst Young. They love the bigger brands, right? So tell us, how did you get your first couple clients? Right, those are usually the hardest. And then how did you duplicate those clients to where you are today?
Yeah. So first couple clients were definitely friends and family. And when you dive into entrepreneurship, a lot of times the people closest to you are or can or can't be the most supportive people, but the most supportive people in your life may opt into your services. And that's how I started out. But I learned very quickly that, I was an accountant just doing anything. If you needed bookkeeping, if you needed a tax return, I didn't specialize in anything. And in the beginning, I was marketing through just marketplace apps, basically saying, hey, I'll do your tax return for the cheapest rate out there. and I got a decent amount of work quick, but I wasn't making all that much money.
Are you saying like apps like LinkedIn, for example?
Yeah,
Where you find-
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a consistent lesson that'll come up in our class that I'm teaching right now. Is that oftentimes, like when you're new, you're going to be tempted to be like, well, all right, we'll be the cheapest because we are pretty similar to this other product or service, but we'll be cheaper. It's a really terrible, generally speaking, no offense, strategy for a startup, because most of the time, if you're new, you're not the biggest. So you can't capitalize on this concept called economies of scale, which by companies doing more can have lower prices than you if they want. They could price you out, right? There's always going to be a cheaper solution for taxes. If somebody's really cheap, they'll do TurboTax or they'll do some other free service. They'll go to H&R or whatever. So what'd you do after you had that realization?
So I don't remember how exactly I got to this point, but there's someone in the accounting community that I booked a call with, this guy, Brandon Hall, that at the time he owned a firm called the Real Estate CPA or the Real Estate Accountant or something like that. And he seemed very successful. So I paid for a call to chat with him to learn about his path and his experience. And he introduced me to many things, but the part I found most valuable was niching down. So he was niched down in the real estate space for accounting and taxes. And he explained to me how that completely changed his angle in terms of marketing, acquiring customers and clients, etc. So I had that realization, and that's when I decided I was going to be the Uber accountant or the ride sharing accountant, and I was going to do accounting and taxes for rideshare entrepreneurs. But I learned really quickly that a lot of those business owners don't make a lot of money and may not have budget for tax planning or bookkeeping. So again, another learning experience.
Right?
Yeah. It's kind of funny because my now thinking back at it, at the time I was thinking, well, my cost per lead, I was living in New York City at the time. My cost per lead is every time I hop in an Uber. So I hop in an Uber, I'm going to try and pitch them on my services and or pitch him or her on my services.
Technique, actually.
Yeah. Got some clients doing that, but it was definitely hard. And then I kind of got lucky. I had a friend from college that was an e-commerce entrepreneur, and he was very successful. And I ran into him at a mutual friend's party, and he said that he just let his accountant go, and he was in the market for a new accountant, and he was interested to see if I was willing to work with him. And I had no experience with e-commerce at the time, and I was honest with him. I told him I would try and I would learn, but I didn't know the space at all. So fake it till you make it type deal.
And how long ago was this?
This was 2018.
Okay.
It must have been. So, yeah, I took on his work, and I noticed how successful he was. And as an entrepreneur, I was looking at what he did and thought to myself, well, I'm an entrepreneur. Should I be in e-commerce? This guy's immensely successful, and it's a very scalable business. And it was just him. He was 100% owner, no VC funding, nothing like that.
What type of business?
He was an online seller, an e-commerce seller.
What did he sell?
At that time, he sold inflatable lounge chairs.
Sweet.
And he also sold, have you ever seen the hoverboards that were really viral, maybe in like 2017, 2018? He was one of the first people to bring those to the States. I think he might have been the first person to bring them to the States. So he was a very successful e-commerce entrepreneur. And anyways, I was looking into what he did in his business and thinking to myself, should I be an e-commerce entrepreneur? And then it just clicked to me that, well, wait a minute, maybe this is the space that I should be getting into in terms of niching down as an accounting firm owner. And I started looking into other firms that specialized in online sellers and e-commerce, and there was literally one other firm out there. So immediately that day I bought the domain, and the rest was history from there. There's a much longer story, but that's how I started niching down in
Okay, I got a good question. Did you leave your old clients behind? Because often people niche down, but they're left with the weight of what they started with, right? You have all these personal returns for
You still
Uber
got to do all these
drivers.
Uber driver
And there
tax
are
returns.
times, I'm in the financial service space where you get a mentor, and I love how you brought up that your mentor said you gotta niche down, but then it's hard to give up. You're like, but I'm making money on that portion, because the hardest part was getting them as clients, right? And once you have them as clients, you're like, well, I can just push that to another person at the firm, right? Versus like selling that portion of the book of business to another accounting firm. So what did you do with that block of business?
Yeah, I had a personal relationship with another CPA based out of California, and I just basically worked out a deal with her where, hey, these are your clients now, and the first year, I don't remember the exact details of the deal, but basically, you're going to take over the old book of business. I'll be around if you need me. But after 2 or 3 years, I'm completely out of the picture. And to be completely honest with you, it wasn't like a major business. I had a handful of clients, maybe.
But it's hard with the personal ones,
Yeah.
like family members, because they came to you when they were in need, and now they're like, wait, you're pushing me off to the side now that you're successful.
Yeah.
So I've seen like it could cause a little friction, right?
Yeah, maybe I'm lucky that wasn't an issue for me. I guess my family kind of understood. Yeah.
Taxes could be kind of transactional at times. So I guess sometimes like, not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Versus something that could be a lot more personal at times. Like your doctor leaves you, you're like, no, that's my favorite doctor, right? It could cause some friction, of course.
All right. So before we jump into a quick break and get into our next segment, tell our audience today who your clients typically look like now, what they do, what kind of companies they run, where they're selling, Amazon and or independently or both. Because that'll give our live audience today some insights into who your customers now and are now. And also remember, for those who might want to throw in some questions, he sees their accounting. So he knows a lot about these customers and their business and e-commerce and trends. So tell us.
Yeah. So it's definitely changed over time. Now we work with more established brand owners, but in the beginning, basically the story with the e-commerce accounts was similar type of situation where I set up the website and kind of nothing happened. And I had to figure out marketing and sales. Again, I thought I could be if I was a great accountant, if you build it, they will come. And that wasn't the case for me. So
I've started some websites like that too.
yeah,
But it's not the case for 99.9% of people, to be fair out there.
yeah,
I think there's this myth that you're good at something and then people show up. Not
right.
even musicians typically. Usually you still have to put in the work and build the right relationships.
So for me, I was getting referrals from my first e-com client. He was very popular in the e-com community. So a lot of my business in the beginning came from referrals, but and so slowly it grew over time. But the big break for us was at a in-person event. It was an e-com event actually in Miami, so pretty close by to here. I met a YouTuber. His name is Scott Hilsey, and he was really popular in the e-com community. Probably now has a couple 100,000 or maybe millions of subscribers. I don't know for sure. But I met him at an event, and he just had a ton of questions for me about accounting and taxes and how it impacts his business. And 2 to 3 months after the event, he had texted me and said, hey, I have a tax issue. My current accountant tells me I owe whatever $200,000 in taxes. I don't remember the number, but he says that's impossible. I don't feel like I'm making that much money. I don't know how she calculated it. Can you please help? So we got one of our bookkeepers at the time on the project, and we looked into it. And sure enough, the accountant. It wasn't really the accountant's fault. It was actually the bookkeeper's fault. They just made a mistake because e-commerce accounting can be pretty complicated with certain things. And instead of him paying, let's just say $200,000 in taxes, we recalculated his estimated tax bill, and it was like $50,000 or something like that because he had overpaid in previous periods. And he was so excited about that. And I remember presenting it to him on a call saying, hey, this is where your accountant and the bookkeeper went wrong. You might want to let them know. And he's like, no. I don't have an accountant or bookkeeper anymore. You guys are now my accountant or bookkeeper. So we got kind of lucky that at the time, one of the biggest YouTubers in the space became one of our clients.
Yeah,
And
saving somebody $200,000 will do that for you.
yeah. And about a month or two later, or maybe a couple weeks later, he said, what you guys do is so valuable. I would love to put you on our YouTube channel. And we run his YouTube channel. The video got like 70,000 hits, and we got a lot of internet traffic from that. So that was my first insight into like, oh wow, this is what internet marketing can really do for you if you do it right. So yeah, that was our first lucky break with Scott.
So I love this story because everyone typically will look at you and say he's so lucky he got on their YouTube channel, and that is why he's successful. But I always say that's a bunch of bullshit. Right, because as you were talking, I was writing down the ripple impact that happened. You had a mentor that said niche down, right? That mentor then led to you continuously networking, and you met someone at an event that knew you, and it was an e-commerce business, and then that was a handshake, and then you helped him, and then you went to this other e-commerce event, another networking event where you met the YouTuber, and then he saw you in person, and you got to chat. So too often we are missing out on building these rich relationships because we don't go to events. We're stuck on our iPhones, messaging people on social media and on Instagram, just hoping to go viral, where when you look at the most successful entrepreneurs, it's still done in person and shaking people's hands. And then those lead to those viral moments that you went through on YouTube. And it was not lucky. It's because you put yourself out there in those typical situations. So we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump into our new segment with the FEU students.
Join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet with OWL. Access new networks and otherwise unreachable professional contacts through the one-on-one call feature on the app. Scroll through the list of available professionals and join them for a quick call to build rich connections, expand invaluable relationships, and to broaden your professional landscape without needing lofty referrals. OWL. We bring vetted pros to your doorstep 24/7 on demand. Join our community by signing up at owl.com today.
Welcome back to the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank podcast. We have a phenomenal guest in studio who focuses on e-commerce accounting and has built a successful business. And now's that time in the show when we ask him what's hot. So he gets to see the financials of all these different e-commerce business models. And I'm just going to ask him broadly from in e-commerce, what's hot? And I know that's super broad, but like it could be anything that you've noticed. I would have said, like, as an example, a few years ago, subscription boxes were super hot, maybe more than a few years ago. Now I think they're kind of waning. People have figured out, well, that's a recurring bill. Like things are a little tight. What's hot now?
Yeah. So on the advertising front, TikTok is very hot right now, both organic and as a paid ad platform. So I'm seeing more and more entrepreneurs diving into TikTok and really understanding, how to drive more sales from.
Can you dive a little deeper? Because obviously TikTok is going crazy with their ads. I used to get practically none, and now I'm seeing more, but also the TikTok shop, right? And Instagram failed with the shop, and I just placed my first order. And it was interesting. It was a lot different than Amazon orders. So when you say like going into TikTok, like kind of dive deeper, from the creator's point of view versus the business owner point of view, selling products like these Celsius cans on this table, for example.
Yeah. So most of our clients now are more sophisticated brand owners. So they have some sort of following either generated from other sources of paid traffic, whether it's Facebook ads or Google ads or something like that. Or we've had clients even that are YouTubers that drive sales to their products from their YouTube channel. So I'm not a TikTok shop or advertising platform expert, but what I have seen with our clients is it's not unanimous, but I would say at least 50% of our clients are to some extent onboarding onto TikTok shop and are at least testing TikTok as an additional source of traffic for their brands.
Seems like a no-brainer, right? Yeah. They're on all these other platforms, and TikTok is the hottest app out there right now with these short clips, of course, and of course the younger generation, which is about to ask you a few questions, right? They're on there and they're big consumers, so it makes perfect sense. So this segment is new. We have a class of FAU entrepreneurship students here. So I'm going to kick things off and let our first student ask you a question, Chris.
So I know that now you're dealing with primarily larger scale businesses. in terms of the TikTok area, every other thing that I see is someone trying to sell an Amazon FBA service, so on and so forth. They're selling the business as a product. With you coming from the accounting end of it, how difficult was it with that dynamic shift from in-person retail to, I mean, really heavy e-commerce to everyone now getting into that business through social media marketing, to keep on top of and keep them in line with the changing regulations and guidelines, you know, principles in terms of accounting with e-com?
Yeah. So a couple of different ways that that's affected us. The main thing is our clients are typically a younger entrepreneur. And I mean, no joke, for a while, our clients were between the ages, for the most part, like 90-something% of our clients were between the ages of 16 and 23. Now they're a little bit older, and it's between the ages of like 22 to 30. That makes up pretty much like 95% of our clients. So definitely younger entrepreneurs. But part of the issue is when you deal with a younger entrepreneur, they don't have experience paying taxes. And it sucks the first time you tell, especially a successful entrepreneur, hey, you have to pay your taxes. So that's definitely something that was difficult. Also something that in
Can you
terms
share
of
what happens when you don't pay your taxes? So everyone's like, what are they going to do? Who's going to come after me? When they don't realize, like, they go to prison, right? Like,
yeah, you could, or you know, tax levies against assets that you own. It gets pretty
what
ugly
do
if
you
you don't
mean?
pay
I
your
could
taxes.
just own an LLC and I'm good, right? And I've heard that one before.
Yeah, no, that definitely doesn't help, because if you, I mean, not to get too technical, but if you have an LLC and it's a flow through structure, the individual is the person paying the taxes. So if the IRS is going after someone, it's that individual who really is the person who owns all the assets, cars, houses, etc.
That limited liability is for, like, if something goes wrong and a customer sues you, it's not like your financial liabilities. You can just be like, that's the company's, that's
Right.
their problem. Take them to jail. That only happens once you run a public company. Then you get a golden parachute and everything's fine. But these smaller individual private firms, not the case.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yep. Next
You want to
question.
go to our next question?
Okay, so I was wondering, since the segment's on what's hot, if the popularity of like clothing specifically, like through the e-commerce platform, if that's increasing or not, or if you think people are like increasing online purchases, or people still want to like buy from in-store.
Great question.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to say. What I will say is, for our clients, I have clients that sell all kinds of different things, from clothing to supplements to you name it, all kinds of stuff. So I haven't necessarily noticed a lot of entrepreneurs flocking towards clothing or whatever different types of products. But what I will say is that it's pretty clear that the e-commerce space in general is growing very quickly. So we are noticing more entrepreneurs in the space. And as we onboard clients, they typically grow more successful with time. So it seems like an indicator that e-com in general is just a growing space.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think it's a really interesting question, though, because fashion may be one of those carve outs that really there still is a physical brick and mortar store kind of option or avenue or channel that people pursue. If you look at the performance reports, both quarterly and stock wise, for like the Max Group or TJ Group, the group that owns TJ Maxx and Marshalls and those, where it's like kind of fast fashion, but not so much like some of the newer apps and things out there, but where people go to shop in person for a deal. Like, those stores are still crowded. People still like that. Whereas we know e-commerce continues to grow as well.
What I will say is we have had a few clients try to go the retail route, where they grew their brands and developed their brands through online sales. We had a client get into Nordstrom. We had another client get into a whole bunch of Target stores in like the Northeast region. And they didn't do as well in person retail for whatever reason, or they didn't do as well as they expected.
Well, the margins, right?
Yeah, right. And it's a lot of upfront investment as well. So it's
Inventory. Yep.
it's just a different, completely different part of the market.
All right, let's go to our next question. I bet this has to do with selling on Amazon. Maybe he's been asking me a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, I just have two questions. So, with you seeing like the financial side of these entrepreneurs and everything, I wanted to know, what do you think you should focus on if you want to start an e-commerce business or Amazon FBA, in terms of, like, do you just focus on what's what's hot? Like, do you just try to find a gap in the market and sell something, or do you just try like hop on a train? And then the other question was, I wanted you to like touch on like the negative side of entrepreneurship, like how long it really took you to get here, like the uncertainty and everything like that.
Yeah. So in terms of how to get started in e-com, what I typically see with our entrepreneur clients is they start off in the direct-to-consumer space, not so much with a marketplace platform like Amazon or Facebook or something like that. So Shopify is very popular direct-to-consumer tool that a lot of entrepreneurs use. And a great way to get into e-commerce is drop shipping. So there are companies out there that are based usually in China that will take the inventory risk for you, essentially. So let's say you sell, I don't know, these little shrimp toys, right? There are companies out there that will supply the shrimp toys, and if you go out and acquire customers, they'll ship them directly to your customers. So it's a very low risk business model for you to get into e-commerce. And I would say 9 times out of 10, the e-commerce entrepreneurs that I deal with typically started there. But as you continue to grow and develop as an e-commerce entrepreneur, you're going to have to figure things out, like how do you do US fulfillment? Are you going to have your own warehouse? Are you going to do a 3PL company in the US? How do you get your customer experience better? How do you get them products faster, etc.? So yeah, and I don't remember your second question. I'm sorry.
The negative side.
Oh, the negative
Hard
side. That.
parts about this.
Yeah. So for me, I worked a lot, a ton of hours, and sometimes you get emotionally invested in it. You know, when I don't have any children, but to me, my business is my baby, and sometimes I get upset when people don't handle my baby with care. You know, if you have all of our people are great, our employees are great, vendors we work with, etc. But you know, they don't love my business as much as I do, and that was something that took me a while to learn. Like, oh, you know, this is my thing that I'm working on growing, and that was definitely something for me that it was a learning curve for sure. But other than that, it's just a lot of hours. And also, what I will say is, be careful the energy you let in, because I kind of said this before, where there's a lot of people that are supportive of your decisions and say, great, that's so exciting, you want to be an entrepreneur. But there's an equal amount of people that may not have as much confidence in you, and oftentimes they won't hesitate to share that with you, and that's can be tough to deal with, especially if you're not an established entrepreneur, you're not making any money, and yeah.
And when you have a personal brand, which you have, and you get a lot of negative comments. I got one this morning in our community group on Owl, and then also I'm like, next, if you don't like it here, leave our group. Our group is what it's about, and you just have to have thick skin. So I will, before we go to our last question in the segment, can you tell the group here how many no's you've received in your life, right? Because talking about disappointment in entrepreneurship, people don't see that you're getting told no 95% of the time, probably, or 99% of the time, right? And when you're newer, you're getting told at a higher percentage. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I get told no all the time. And to take it a step further, as an entrepreneur, something that's difficult to understand, at least in the beginning when you first go through it, is if you have 10 ideas, most likely 9 of them will not work. Or if you have 100 ideas, you're lucky if maybe 3 work. And you might be surprised that the things that you didn't think would work in a different way than you expected. So not getting too emotionally attached to your decision making, in my opinion, is very important. But in addition to the no's, it's the little minor failures that you get hit with throughout your journey as well.
Yeah, and that happens when you try to do anything entrepreneurial. I have no idea if this is live streaming into the classroom now, but I hope it is. We're trying something new. So
comment. You guys better comment. We're at marker number 34 minutes. If you're not commenting, all you FAU students listening might not pass Kevin Cox's class right now, right?
I think they'll be okay.
Maybe they fell asleep when we were talking about taxes.
Our producer could see the comments, everybody. You better post on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. Okay, our last question of the segment.
So I actually was going to ask about drop shipping, what your take was on it and how that relationship is like affected because it's not like a personal one. But if I also had to ask, I'm not sure if it pertains to the conversation, but TikTok, using TikTok as like a product research like thing, would you recommend it?
Yeah. So with drop shipping, I definitely do encourage it for a beginner entrepreneur for sure. If you're interested at all in e-commerce and you want to take the plunge and try it, I think it's a great tool.
Can I add something real quickly just to build on your last answer? I completely agree. It's a pretty easy way to get into entrepreneurship, learn a ton of the basics. That said, it's pretty easy to get in. So it's pretty competitive, right? Almost anyone can figure it out and start dabbling and doing it. And what you said in your answer to the last question also about drop shipping was if you can acquire customers, and then you kind of went on and like, that's a point where I want to chime in a little bit. So acquiring customers, that's really the difficult part, right? Is customer acquisition cost. People say like, how do you pay for customer, or how do you get customers, or how do you get users? Well, essentially, most people don't think of it this way. You have to buy them. You have to buy the customers, and how much that cost can range a lot. And you need to make sure how much your cost, customer acquisition cost, is sufficient that you still make a profit at the end of the day. That said, if you have an existing audience, if you have a popular persona on TikTok, if you're not drop shipping something, you're crazy. If you have 2 million, 3 million followers, because you have an audience, you've acquired an audience, they're potential customers. If you have nothing like that and you can't partner with anybody who has something like that, it can be a little bit more competitive, a little bit more difficult. Maybe then you have to start spending more money on marketing to, again, acquire those customers. Getting in the game's pretty easy. Acquiring those customers can be tricky, but there are tips and tricks and partnerships and a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah. So 100% agree with what you're saying. What I will say with drop shipping, again, with the big, if you can acquire customers profitably, it's tough to sustain long term, because in e-commerce, if you want to develop a brand, any brand, Nike, Chipotle, whatever brand you think of, it took time for them to develop that brand, where you don't have to see a commercial to walk into Chipotle. You're aware of the brand. As you're starting to build a brand, your customers have to have a great customer experience. And if you think about an e-commerce business, there's very limited encounters with the business. It's literally when they show up to your website and when they receive their product. So if you have a 3-week shipping time, that customer is probably going to be pretty upset. So I think if you're a newer entrepreneur or newer to e-commerce, I think dropshipping is a great tool to product test or see if you like e-commerce in general. But I think a longer term solution is figuring out, how do you enhance that customer experience? How do you get them a nice branded product with a great unboxing experience in 3 or 4 days time or less? So I definitely do endorse dropshipping for a newer entrepreneur, but you definitely want to graduate to something else if you want to grow in the space, for sure.
Well, that's a great segment with FAU students and everybody listening. You could call Chris, including the students listening, on Owl App 101 next week. He'll be our featured expert. So, of course, follow him and you'll receive a notification or text message, and give him a ring. He's only going to be $1 for a limited time to help mentor other FAU students and anyone else that wants info. We're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our Plead the Fifth segment of the show.
Step into our state-of-the-art innovation lab and create your digital future. Oz uses cutting-edge technology and 22 years of industry knowledge to enhance customer experience through digital innovation in a variety of expertise. Oz is a leading global consulting company whose services and solutions are trusted by startup, midsize, and even Fortune 500 companies. Get to know more about Oz's Salus, a mobile solution bringing us back to max capacity, and their latest solution, Rainmaker, saving insurance companies years of work. To learn more about Oz and their exciting technologies, visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. So on this segment, Chris, it is called Plead the Fifth. You can only plead the fifth one time, and then you got to figure out a way to get around the difficult questions that Kevin is going to ask you, or these students will not participate in their class project with you. Kevin's going to just pass and go to the next entrepreneur. Okay, so Chris, my question for you is, you talked about failures earlier in the episode. So what was your biggest financial failure? How much money did you lose? It might have been a marketing project. It could have been a partnership. How much money approximately was that?
Yeah. The one that hurt the most was probably when I was maybe a year into Ernst Young and I tried coding a mobile app, and it cost me maybe $5,000 to $10,000 to develop, and it wasn't even approved by the Apple App Store.
Ooh.
So I burned through that cash pretty quick, and that was
Never
all my money at the time.
Never made it out of the app to the App Store.
Never made it in.
They don't approve it.
Now looking back on it, I probably could have finagled the tool to make it better, and but yeah, I tried to reapply maybe 2 or 3 times, and they just wouldn't let the app in.
I know a thing or two about that. Mine's stuck in the App Store as we speak. Apple approved, but then you got to get approved by Android too. And the truth is, you got to keep going and going. Apps are very difficult, and 99% of them fail. Okay, Kevin.
All right, I got to go rapid fire. We got to get out of here. So, what's the most overpriced accounting firm?
Oof. I don't believe in overpriced accounting firms. Maybe I'm biased. I believe that people should charge where they perceive their value in the marketplace. That's what we do, and I believe that's what firms like accounting, like
Not around it.
Are you an accountant or an attorney? Okay,
You got around that one.
What was your how much did your biggest client do in revenue last year?
Ooh.
Yeah. We had one of our clients just short of $90 million.
And what's
the name of that company?
Yeah, what's that name?
I plead the fifth.
We got him.
Okay, so now I just have one more question. Now that he's pled the fifth, he has to answer. For the everyday consumer, maybe small business entrepreneur, what's the best tax trick, gimmick, scam, but that's legal?
Scams.
Yeah.
Give us one
was gonna say
piece
it's
of
not.
tax advice.
So it depends. If you're not an American citizen and you do not live in the U.S., there's a lot of cool stuff you could do. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can set up an S-corp tax structure, which will save you a lot of money in taxes. But I guess to give you a kind of the grand slam answer is, if you have a certain type of business, we're exporting products or services. Puerto Rico, if you live in Puerto Rico, there's a rule called the Act 60 where your tax rate goes all the way down to 4% in total.
I had a buddy who did that, and it was crazy, on a huge company like ADT Security, a security company, and he just crushed it. He did that move, but then you don't have internet in Puerto Rico, and hurricanes come there, so it's not so simple.
You have to live there for at least 6 months out of the year, and you have to have the right company structure too, so it's complicated.
Well, Chris, thank you for joining us here on the Shrimp Tank today. For our audience listening, what are the best routes to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you can find me at Ecom Accountant. Pretty easy to remember. Or you can reach out to us on our website at theecommerceaccountants.com if you're an online entrepreneur seeking advice.
All right, and students in the classroom, I'm not coming back over there. You're free to go, and I'll see you on Friday.
Put a comment down so we know that you are watching this episode. Take care, everybody.
Like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the